So should I address you about wrapping up, or should I be telling Taylor? Taylor, the weekend is done. Yeah, it was interesting. I thought about you guys a lot. I mean, that might sound obvious because I was commentating on you, but it's weird. I felt like a kiddo at Disneyland that sort of got lost.
Or it's too short for the rides.
Yeah, and like my family was off, doing their thing, and I didn't really know where I was, and I was missing being with my family.
But I'm sure it was cool to like watch the dynamic of the race play out from like a 10,000-foot view versus only seeing it from the race perspective.
It was seeing the race from a different angle was extremely eye-opening.
Yeah.
Just because when you're in it, it feels really violent, obviously. And that doesn't come across on the TV.
Yeah.
It feels just like chaotic and scary and stressful, and like at any moment something crazy could happen, and you're just always so on edge. And that doesn't really come through the TV screen, but what did is just the speed.
Yeah.
Like the speed that we go to see that from a bird's eye view was really eye-opening.
I want your opinion on, like, obviously the speed during the race feels violent, especially like the accelerations, but it doesn't really translate to a TV screen. Like,
oh, the change in speed.
The accordion effect.
Yeah.
You being in like the odd end that you're out of this race because of your injury, but like knowing it, could you see that on TV?
Yeah. I mean, you could see, because the thing is, we could tell when people at the back of the group were just freewheeling and coasting, and you could immediately, you'd know, okay, this group isn't working together.
Yeah.
And then at other times, like when Keegan crashed, for example, we saw his crash, they played it on replay on slow-mo, and then to see the determination he had immediately to get back to the group was amazing. And then they cut away right as he was getting close to the group, went to a different group, and then a couple of minutes later they went back to his group, and he was on the front splitting that group, and it was just completely strung out, little gaps between, and it was such an interesting. I'm really glad that moment was captured, because one, it showed how ruthless this race is, and how the people that are successful can have a complete rock bottom moment and then somehow change their mentality and go on offense shortly thereafter. But then also just the speed that it had on full display was just incredible, because the dust, and then now and then they have this sort of side-on shot, and the speed that the world was just whipping by at was just crazy.
I feel like too, like that group that Keegan was in, for example, the race it's so hard to get it to play out in like a more racy way 7+ hours in. If you get one or two people in a group of 8 to 10 that are motivated, like that can motivate everybody else, then the race turns back on 7+ hours in. Yeah. Which is so weird to think about.
No, it's so true, how it ebbs and flows. And that was one thing that I was a little bit worried about, is whether the TV coverage would be able to convey how tactical it is, and how where people fall in the results sheet can just really hang in the balance of, is this group going to work together? Is there going to be a crash that somehow creates tension, and then that snowballs into the group working together? All these tiny little nuances, because I think as this race has developed over the last couple of years, we try to tell the outside world, like, the tactics were like this, and it was super road racy, and it was really negative. When we throw these terms out there, and people are like, well, why didn't you just ride harder?
It just looks like you guys are pedaling by.
Yeah, like, why didn't you just try harder? But the camera angles and the way we were able to talk about it, I think really showed what, like, not having cohesion in a group does, and having the time gaps. And it's like, these two riders are just pulling back time on this group of 12 hitters. Like, how is that possible? But you could actually see it unfolding. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about what this could mean for the sport moving forward, because it's going to, like, the outside viewer who hasn't been in these races like us can understand how it's way more than just riding hard for 200 miles.
This race, more than any other race, I feel like, it's like if you read a book and you're like, you tell all your friends, like, you got to read this book.
Yeah,
you got to read this book.
That's so true. Yeah.
Like, because there's a start of a new book every time at 5:50 every once a year in downtown, and nobody really knows like the ins and outs of the story.
Yeah.
Like they can see kind of they read the back of the book by watching it on YouTube, but having you in the studio and like telling those storylines throughout the day and like giving a real insider's perspective, I think is going to be really valuable to the viewer and hopefully like the sport moving forward, right? Because they can understand those little storylines. And
you know, I got the download from you in terms of how your race played out, but I think it's also important for the viewers to see that like you can just have your heart ripped out for no reason other than just being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
yeah,
And when I got back to the house here and saw the mechanical you had and how it was so 1 in a million, and just knowing what form you were taking into this race, it was just like such a gut blow. And again, it goes back to like you're gonna have to try to share the story of how that unfolded in a succinct way on, you know, social media or however you end up doing it. But if we could have seen someone plowing into the back of you and then you looking down at your bike and just that moment of like, you know, recognition of what had happened, I think that would take people's understanding of the sport even further.
but it's also like this race in particular, there's so much like zoned in focus for 2+ months for a 1 day thing.
Yeah.
That I feel like a lot of us, if we don't, like there's so many variables out there, right?
Yeah.
Not only do you have the variables in the 200 miles, but you have the variables in the terrain, the weather, the like potential for the body just to say no at mile 100. But like, if we can all kind of understand that the likelihood of something going wrong that's out of our control is higher on a day like this, I feel like the easier it is mentally to kind of accept it.
It's true. And I was gonna ask that because, you know, 2 weeks ago you won Rule of 3 and you beat one of the top racers in gravel. You just rode him off your wheel. And having done that, as you know, putting myself in your position, you had to have been going into Unbound knowing on the one hand, okay, it's Unbound, anything could happen. I could make it 5 miles and have a destructive crash and not be able to continue, or everything could fall into place. I use this fitness and I'm racing in the final selection.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the former option happened.
Yeah.
You've been doing this a really long time, and I'm just curious like how you're doing this morning when you look back, because it's such an empty feeling of everything was there except the luck, and now somehow I just have to compartmentalize and move on because there's another race coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always try and like talking with Kenny about it, like there's a lesson to be learned in everything that goes on out there. And while yes, I think it was bad luck, like quote unquote bad luck, I also think that there's things that I can learn and do better to like mitigate those risks in a way. Because you know how it is like if you position yourself well, it doesn't matter how well positioned you are, if you're not in the front 5, like you're gonna feel that accordion effect.
Yeah.
And I think just taking a positive away from it is like, okay, there's something that I can do to kind of mitigate those risks moving forward, and just positioning myself a little bit better. And like, I think that that's kind of my fault for, I probably could have been positioned a little bit better to reduce the chance of something like that happening.
That's true, but I mean, you also said you dropped into that section like top 35 and there were 181 starters.
Yeah.
It's such a high bar. Like, even though, okay, maybe you could have avoided the crash if you were top 20, you still had 150 people behind you. Like, you did a good job, and that's I mean, when Keegan went down, he was in a group of like 8, perfect strung out line, basically as low a risk scenario as you can have in this race. Touch of wheels, and he just absolutely slammed. So it can just happen at any time. But I hear what you're saying. What do you think you could have done besides be top 15 instead of top 30?
I think, like I was telling Kenny, like when those accordion effects happen, instead of accordioning like in a straight line, doing the best to almost like find an out.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Have an escape
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah. So like position yourself to almost like put yourself in the gutter
Yeah.
to not go down.
Yeah.
But then that mitigates risk from at least both sides. It just makes
it's a great point. And it's one of the things last year that was so eye-opening for me with the mountain bike tires is I was doing that going into that section called Reserve Road, and I remember the Bahrain guys with Mohoric just lined it up, and I got on their right side, and there was this huge like fan effect that happened across the road, and I got pushed completely off the road.
Yep.
And because I had the mountain bike tires, I could just like monster truck through the grass and survive it, and dropped into that section in really good position.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right. But at a certain point, man, if you just look at all of the top riders that weren't able to finish yesterday or completely limped in way further down the results sheet than you'd expect, this race is such a lottery.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my last question, because I know you need to get off to the airport, but you come from years of doing the 350.
Yep.
You've won the 350 here. I know you had some nervousness about doing the 200 because it's a completely different race.
Yep.
But when I asked you how positioning went into that first selection point, I was just hoping that you were going to give me a positive answer, because like that's the key difference, right? You know you have the fitness, you know you can go the distance, but how is it going to be navigating the bunch?
Yeah.
And you were doing it pretty damn well, and it sounds like you want another crack at it. Like you're ready to kind of compartmentalize, take what you learned and take it into next year.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely sad to miss out on the XL, but at the same time, change is good, right? Like doing something different, keeping it fresh. And while the 200 is a total, like it's a new beast to me in terms of like the intensity and like basically just the violence in the group in terms of accelerations and splits and stuff like that, I thoroughly enjoy that like exciting type of racing.
Yeah.
Because it keeps you on your toes the whole time, right?
Yeah.
And 200 is still a distance where I feel like I can thrive like past that 7-hour mark.
Oh,
like that's
yeah.
kind of where I feel comfortable. So I think next year we're gonna come back for the 200 again. Like,
Oh yeah.
the XL will always be there, and I think the XL is going to continue to get more like competitive and faster. Like this year was a perfect example of how many stat guys were in the XL, and
Yeah.
I think that's always going to be there. But like we're not getting younger.
Yeah.
In the 200, almost, I think there's an age where like we have to take advantage of that, of at least trying. And so, yeah, I think the 200 was something I was really nervous for.
Yeah.
But also it kind of ignited this excitement for next year.
Yeah. It didn't feel overwhelming to you in the moment.
I will admit, like, leaving town, I thought it was going to be neutral, and it was far from neutral.
It is so not neutral.
And
It's
so,
one of those fake neutrals where you're doing 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, and so I think that was very eye-opening and shocking in a way, but it also leaves me excited and wanting to experience more versus just experiencing the first 40 miles.
Nice.
So
Nice, man. Well, I'm sorry for your bad luck, but
it's all right.
I think there were some big positives from it, from what I can tell.
Yeah, and good job in the booth. That after the mechanical, we did feeds all day, and we were watching the finish for the men's and women's, and you and Meredith and everybody did an awesome job. It was pretty fun to watch.
And we should mention, you called the winner. You literally predicted Cam Jones. And at the time I was like, really? You're like, I think he can do it. And
Yeah,
bam.
he's such a horse, like such a workhorse.
He is.
Yeah.
Sweet, Taylor. Thanks, man.
Thank
That was
you.
fun.